Hello, everyone. Officially, welcome. Thank you so much for attending live. We'll also be sending out a recording after the fact, so don't worry if you need to jump or if you miss something. You'll see more of us, whether you like it or not. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. Again, today we're talking about performance reviews, employee recognition, as we sort of framed it, the good, the bad, and the pointless, is a sort of conversation to talk about all the bad things and the bad ways we've seen people implementing these different programs to get to the end point, which is here are the recommendations or good ways in which you can employ these things to get the most out of them and the most out of your teams, which is really the whole point of doing these things in the first place. So with us today, as you can see, we've assembled an amazing group. We have, just starting off, Kim Minnick here, who's founder of CodeTraveller HR, head of member experience for the fractional people community, which I'm sure a lot of people are attending from. We also have Rachel Kleban, who's the VP people at OpenPhone, founder of LevelUp as well, and co-hosting alongside me, Una Japundzic from HeyTaco, probably the most fun peer recognition tool you can possibly find or think of, and myself, Matt Meadows from WorkStory, a platform that helps with making performance reviews not a pain in the ass, I guess, for lack of a better term. But again, we're coming here to talk about the relationship between employee recognition, performance reviews. Do they matter? How can they possibly work together? I think the best way just to sort of frame the conversation, again, we're breaking it to three parts. We're going to keep the chat open, so if anyone has any questions as we're progressing through, we're going to start off with sort of the bad. Hopefully you don't see too much of yourselves within that. We'll start with the bad experiences and pointless, as we put it, broken experiences before the good. So please chime in with any questions. We'll do our best to field those. But before we kick things off, I just want to do a quick sort of roundtable of the group here, just to give a quick additional 30 seconds beyond what I shared of who we are, what our experiences are, and what we're sort of bringing to the table for the conversation. So just to go back in that order, Kim, if you want to kick off with a little bit.
Oh, I was not prepared to kick this off. Hey,
Okay.
everyone. No, it's
We're
fine. It's
casual.
fine.
We're
We got
casual
this.
here. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kim. Yeah, so like Matt said, I am a solopreneur. He called me a founder, which feels like big shoes to fill, but it's a one woman show over here. I do fractional HR work, so not only do I operate as a head of people, but also I really love performance management. So hard sell if you want to talk performance, slide into my DMs. And along that journey, I met this wonderful woman named Ella Sconey, who started a community called Fractional People, which are about 700 wackos like me who are out here trying to make their own business. And I just make sure they have a good time in the community. That's it. That's all oh, and I talk too much on LinkedIn.
No, I think I don't think you say too much. It's all very useful and very entertaining, but in the best possible way of like, you're definitely getting my eyeballs because of the language you use, which I think is fantastic, and it's a breath of fresh air. So keep doing it, and thank you for doing so. Rachel, if you wanna hop
Sure.
in next. Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Rachel Kleban. Matt, excellent job pronouncing my last name. Most people get it wrong. So, and based here in San Francisco, I've been doing this stuff for a long time. And maybe 10, 12 years ago, I sort of stumbled into falling in love with performance management. Kim and I were just commiserating around how we sort of love it, love to hate to love it, but also really love it. And so a lot of my career has been focused on that. Currently, I'm the VP of people at OpenPhone. We're a modern business phone system for small businesses. We're about 150 people fully remote. Prior to this, I was a consultant as well. And so I got really involved with helping clients set up performance management, but actually I spent a lot of time helping them design their leveling frameworks and their leveling expectations and communicating those as part of a broader performance management strategy. So couldn't give it up totally. On the side, I run a small, I'd call it side hustle. Maybe you can call me a founder, Matt, that would be cool. But we help small companies build leveling frameworks for a fraction of the cost and a fraction of the time asynchronously. So that's what I'm up to.
No, thank you. And again, just even more, adding even more to the fact that you're a VP of people at a incredibly cool company, the fact that you have this side hustle, which is like, don't be so casual about it, like so cool. And again, just more why it makes sense for us to have you guys as part of the conversations. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing. Una, do you want to?
Absolutely. I was going to echo Rachel's kudos to you about pronouncing her last name because you pronounced my last name very, very well. And I was very impressed. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it.
My last name because it's way too complicated. But Una from HeyTaco, I'm based in Northern Virginia. Our whole team is based in the DC metro area. And HeyTaco is a peer-to-peer recognition platform. We don't do performance, which is exactly why I'm excited to talk to Kim, Matt, and Rachel. A lot of our customers will come to us and say, how do I integrate all this awesome recognition data into our performance management system? And it's a question I've talked to them about so many different times. So I'm very excited for sharing insights of how our customers have done it and hearing what you guys recommend to be done actually to make it work in sync versus kind of be the bad and the pointless. So super excited for this conversation. At least it'll arm me with insights to share with people who are currently using our recognition platform.
And if I can just chime in super quickly, not to go too tangential here, but I was using HeyTaco for years before I met Una and her team, and I was a little starstruck when I did. So cool. I'm sure everyone will check it out, but it's as easy as basically throwing an emoji on someone in like Slack or other channels. And it's just such a fun way of going about a process, which is typically not so fun or more structured, but we'll talk about that. Okay, and 2 cents from myself, I guess. Matt Meadows, co-founder of WorkStory. As I mentioned, we're sort of the antithesis of the traditional employee performance review. We basically help you to collect real-time feedback within Slack, Teams, email, etc. So your employees have the benefit of all this amazing stuff throughout the year. And then whenever it makes sense, we help to aggregate it all into really quick, easy performance reviews that take minutes rather than hours. So we bring the performance side, Una helps to bring recognition side, and Rachel and Kim are going to help throw everything together based on their incredible experience. So with that, why don't we kick things off officially? Una's going to help lead us through part 1, which is, again, basically starting with bad and helping to show and share examples of when performance and recognition are disconnected or used inappropriately.
Thank you, Matt. We definitely wanted to end on a high note of like, this is what it should look like. This is what we want it to look like. So let's first start with what it should not look like, in a sense of if you leave with one thing today, you should be like, please just don't do this. So Kim, I have a first question I want to pass to you, which is, have you ever worked at a place or consulted with a place that had a strong recognition culture, right? Kudos are flying everywhere, but recognition and performance were just completely mismanaged. Maybe a person that was getting all the kudos was like the worst performer on the team or whatever. I'm curious of like, just it didn't match up. Those two systems did not match up.
I mean, 100%. I feel like every well-meaning program that's not clearly defined or clearly outlined has the potential to like misset what we're recognizing, how we're recognizing, who we're recognizing. And when it's done as you described, it's kind of that like, maybe it's more of a personality contest. Are they rewarding someone because, are they recognizing someone because they're fun and upbeat and have good vibes, but maybe their output isn't quite right? Or we often see maybe they're a quote unquote high performer. They're producing a lot. They're pushing a lot of things to production, but maybe they're kind of a jerk. And when we're rewarding that, like, are we also rewarding those approaches to how they are working? So yeah, it's probably more common than you think. And I think maybe a lot of companies might have some flavors of this woven into their recognition program.
Rachel, what are your experiences with such a misaligned system?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak to a little bit about what we're working on right now at OpenPhone. I think one of my team members is here, so hopefully she won't tell me afterwards that I've misrepresented. But you know, we actually have a really beautiful culture of recognition at my current company, OpenPhone. We have this like really beautiful kudos channel. People write really thoughtful kudos to each other there, and it's like I really thought we had checked the box, like yes, we did it. And we did an engagement survey, you know, earlier this year and got quite a bit of feedback about recognition. People don't feel recognized. Just like, what's the disconnect here? What's going on? Because there's nothing bad happening. it's just not meeting the need. And it's exactly, we got a group of people together. Hey, what do you think? And it really is, it doesn't mean anything when it comes to my performance, right? Like I can get the most beautiful, thoughtful kudos in the kudos channel, and it goes into the ether of Slack and disappears after the next kudos comes around. And so I think where, again, nothing bad or toxic is happening, but it's just not doing the job that it could be doing by really connecting into that. Now, I've also worked other places that have had less beautiful cultures of recognition, where it is feeling like a popularity contest. The same people get kind of hit up for every core values award and every recognition. And I think that can be really tricky too, because again, like Kim mentioned, that disconnect between what's valued and what's assessed is confusing.
Do you find, if I may, I'm gonna
Absolutely.
I
pick
can't
at something. I'm gonna pick at something because I think it's so relatable. What does this mean for my performance? And what does this mean for my performance, or what does this mean for my paycheck? Right? Like, I think that's a very valid thing that I've heard from teams. Like, yeah, I feel recognized. Yes, you see how hard I'm working. I would like more money, please. And sometimes, like, that's where expectations just are misset. And that's when it can be just, yeah, okay, thanks. But what about for me?
Yeah. And maybe that could be anything. It's me. What's about my paycheck? What about my next promotion? What about my growth path? Right? It's like, whether it's pay or some other form of reward, people are hoping that there's a link to it. I understand that. If someone says I got really nice kudos in the kudos channel this week, and I was like really patting myself on the back, but I was like, can I forward this to my manager? Has she seen it? How, am I allowed to toot my own horn about this on my self-review or whatever? And so I do think that even us who think about it all the time can experience that sense of disconnect.
I think if I can chime in as well, just sort of relaying that into an additional topic, like it's such a difficult, sensitive thing of, right, how is recognition and performance tied together or not? And also to what you were alluding to, compensation versus performance, which, you're naturally inclined to think, yes, of course they're going to go together, but for better or for worse, it actually makes sense in many versions to split those up. But anyway, we can get to that sort of later in the conversation, perhaps. But
next category,
right? Yeah, right, exactly. But I just wanted to touch on it. You guys sort of reminded me of as you were talking about who gets the most recognition. I would love for us to talk about the concept of like public versus private recognition. It does make sense to share publicly in some cases, but in some cases it might not. And then not to have too much for us to talk about at once, but specific versus general recognition as well. So I know this group has spoken in the past about, at all hands meetings, calling people out. And I'm just curious from, I guess, the rest of the group here, what your guys' feelings are on public versus private and the benefits or pros and cons.
Rachel, you want to start?
Sure. I think, how do you say, we've created this world in where this like recognition equals fun and feedback equals sad and bad and like serious, right? And I think what I notice happening is that there's this sense of like, if it's public, it's for fun. I don't have to put a lot of thought into it. And, I teach managers on my team when I was a consultant around, how to give good feedback. And, we all have our model, but I always start with a positive example, because I do think that to see a really well-crafted statement of positive feedback or recognition, whatever you want to call it, is like really impactful, to be like, wow, that is so much better than saying good job or wow, you crushed it, right? So I think that I'm not going to have a good answer for you per se, but I think that there's an element of it being public that lets us be a little lazy about it. So whether it's private or public, are you being thoughtful about it? Are you being specific and doing all the things we know makes good, clear feedback?
I love that. One of my favorite questions as a manager, or when I'm stepping into a new organization and having one-on-ones with folks, is how do you like to be recognized? It's absolutely like one of the best questions you could ask. Everyone has their like love languages. This is your professional version of that. Um, and then, so yes, I love tailoring the recognition, just like Rachel said, like, what does good look like? How can we do that? And when we shout out publicly, I think there's an opportunity to, when we're doing big shout outs, less shouting out about the person, more shouting out about the outcome, the initiative, what happened, and then, and we would like to thank those who contributed to the project. I think that's a great way just I think, Rachel, you were saying earlier, do I show my manager this? Like, this makes sure manager sees the contribution, and it doesn't really put anyone on a spot. So just
It's so interesting. Kim, the other day, like at every all hands, our CEO has like 10 minutes. It's like his top of mind. And he started doing this thing every once in a while, like, here's what I'm seeing through the grapevine. This is what I see around the thing. And he's giving everyone kudos. And he's such a nice job. And I didn't even tell him to do it. It was such a lovely moment. And then of course, afterwards, it's like, ooh, he forgot that. Or ooh, like when you recognize publicly, there's always going to be a sense of left out. And I think that's okay. Like we have to just like, I didn't say to him, you did the wrong thing. You did the right thing, but no, somebody's going to be sad or somebody's going to be left out. And so I do think there's an element of care and
Yes.
like thinking about the culture when you're doing a lot of public recognition, because there's always going to be a sense of left out versus if I don't know that someone's getting this amazing feedback, I don't feel sad that I didn't get it. And so finding that right balance, of course, Kim, asking and knowing how people prefer it is super important, but also just thinking about the impact that it has on others.
And you make such a good point. Like when you're yes, it has to be thoughtful. I have definitely missed some recognition in public forums, and it's annoying for everyone involved, and it stings for some folks. And the larger your organization is, what a good opportunity to think about how you scale that throughout. Maybe you didn't get the all hands shout out, but maybe you got the team shout out. And maybe that works given your level and role in the organization. So, yeah, really being thoughtful to your point about public. And yeah, feedback doesn't mean bad. Recognition doesn't just mean good. I love that you called that out because I didn't know I was feeling that recently. And I was like, oh no, that's touching on something I feel.
One thing to add is, Rachel, to your point of public versus private, I think on the public, you can also distinguish between different types of public recognition, because what you're saying is a top-down, very top-down, right? Versus me, let's say Matt and our peers, and me shouting him out in your kudos channel and saying, hey, Matt, that was awesome, right? It could be public, but it doesn't have to be with such high stakes. And I definitely remember in my last company, the CEO or whoever, it was like a VP of sales, whatever, like missed an appreciation. But what they did beforehand was kind of like an accusation audit saying, I'm probably going to forget someone because there's so many people involved in this effort. Oh, it disarmed everyone because they're just human and they are not actually in the trenches, right? Like they don't necessarily know what to do. But I wanted to touch base on Matt's first question of public versus private. And I feel like there's two purposes behind recognition. The first one is making the person actually feel valued and recognized, right? And the public versus private depends on how do they like to be recognized, back to Kim's question. Some people would hate public recognition and they would feel like you don't actually know me and you don't know what I'm about, right? And then the second reason is to also share what's important on the team, right? Sometimes it's for others to see, hey, Kim jumped in last minute and did this really heroic effort. And as much as we don't want people to work overtime, right, it's actually so helpful. Thank you so much, Una, Susie, whatever. So others can see, oh, this is what's actually important on our team and kind of what are the values. So sometimes, like, I think it's just like, those are the two jobs to be done. And it's kind of balancing the two things behind sharing recognition that we have to think about.
Having like a little thought, and I don't want to hold us back on other topics, but it occurs to me that there is a difference between recognition from a manager or leader than from a peer. And when I talk about our kudos channel and our kudos culture, like they're really beautiful because they mostly come from peers, right? And it doesn't feel like you're leaving anyone out. It doesn't feel bad because it's like a culture builder, right? It's like, hey, it's building connection. But when the CEO or when leaders go on all hands and say, this person, this person, this person, it feels a little different because that is perceived as more of like an assessment of performance because then it is a manager or a leader who can do that. And so I don't know, that's an interesting distinction to me about why it sometimes feels really beautiful and sometimes feels kind of tricky.
100%.
I would, if I could add, I was just as Rachel, you brought up the polarization of feedback versus recognition. I remembered that I had read a statistic, and this, and again, I might be jumping a little too far ahead in terms of giving everyone actionable advice, but that's sort of what we want to do here. I think this is just my opinion. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. To me, very low hanging fruit in terms of if you don't have recognition at all other than in the hallway, this is a very easy thing to start doing and to be more mindful of and to start doing more regularly. There are tools such as HeyTaco, not to be so salesy, that can help you do it. But the reason why I say this though is the statistic I saw was that people who get regular praise and recognition are, I think it was a Gallup survey, I think, like 3 times more likely to trust when it comes to sharing more critical feedback. So because you're establishing that relationship already, even though it's from this great place of, hey, awesome job with this stuff, the fact that you've opened that channel means that they're going to be more receptive to you in the future when you're sharing things that might be more constructive. So again, just if you're not doing it, start doing it, and it's going to pay dividends in all these other places. And yes, everything else we're talking about are very specific nuances within that.
We might have talked about that in one of our prep calls, the notion of the emotional bank account, right? From like the 7
yes.
highly effective people. Like if all you do is take withdrawals, which is sharing negative feedback or constructive criticism, right? That's not just kudos. People feel like, oh, our bank account is empty between the two of us, between a manager and a performer, right? You have to make deposits, which is also notice the good stuff, right? Which is where the recognition can happen. And then the perception of when I'm giving you feedback, it's not bad, right? It's like, I want you to improve because I care about all these other things.
A recruiting manager I worked with, shout out Eli, he once told me trust is earned in droplets and lost in buckets. And it's just so, it's like that with recognition and feedback. You have to put so little in over time, and then you can take those withdrawals, the bucket will still look filled.
To move away a little bit from recognition and go into the performance, right? Because I know we have a lot of thoughts there. There was this phrase, I think I looked up somewhere, it says annual review theater, which is how most people nowadays do performance reviews. Once a year, usually before Christmas, right? Because calendar year, everyone's trying to rush it or whatever. We sit down and we say, how did you do this year? Actually, let me tell you how you did this year, right? Is that how you normally, have you seen, is that bad performance management? Is there something better? How does that kind of annual review theater impact the team?
I mean, yes, and the theater is why we hate performance reviews, genuinely. Like it is this very check the box exercise. I kind of frame it as, performance management is a program that you train for. It is hard. It is not just performance reviews. It's the recognition. It's the building trust. It's this. Just like a marathon. I would love to run a marathon, 26.2 miles. Let's go. I'm not training for a marathon. That is so many more miles than 26.2 miles. So I'm never going to run a marathon. Like, that's fine. And I have accepted that in my life. I think similarly with performance review theater, that is trying to run a marathon without doing the training for it. And people aren't prepared. You're trying to rush it. And then what really like cuts deep is we say, cool, now we're going to base your raise off of this. Now we're going to base your livelihood off of this. And sure, maybe you only got 2%, but your peer who did a little bit of a better job branding themselves got 3.5%. That 1.5 isn't a huge deal. But next year, when it happens again, and the year after, and it happens again, that's where we start seeing these like deltas. So performance review theater doesn't just harm like your culture. It's literally harming the livelihood of your employees. So maybe don't. Rachel, maybe you have a different perspective that's less salty.
I think maybe do, but better. I have a really old-fashioned idea, which is that we pay people to do a job, and I think it's okay to say if they're doing a good job or a bad job. Like, I think it's okay to want to make sure we are getting our money's worth, right? That sounds very anti everything we talk about now, but like, it is a reality that if someone isn't earning their keep, they should be told and try to earn that keep, right? Those are terrible words, but ultimately, I believe that's true. Now, do I think there's a way better version of what you explained, Una? Absolutely. And I think it's only going to get better. I mean, I think, like Kim, you're saying it's a marathon, it's training all year. And I think that that's been a really, really hard thing to do. And I will be salesy on your behalf, Matt. I think tools like WorkStory are saying, hey, we can help you because there's AI and automation, and we can find ways to make this happen all year. And I think I'm, for the first time in many years, being influenced by new and different ways of doing things because of tools like Matt. So I think that there's plenty wrong. I think there is plenty of theater, but I'm not necessarily ready to give up on that, because I think fundamentally it's fair to tell people if they are doing a good job or not.
Mm-hmm.
I can say many more things, but we can see where we want to take it.
And like,
Go for it.
I mean, agree with everything you said. Like, I think we are taking just similar. You're probably taking the high road. I'm probably taking the low road to Rome. Because you're right. Like, we are paying somebody to do a job, and you need to do that job well. And you need to be told if you're not, and we should support you if you're not, and all of the things that we talk about. And at the end of the day, not everyone does every job. Like, there should be a level of turnover. Yeah, and also, I think, there are I think we all use such similar approaches in businesses, like, right, annual review, quarterly feedback, whatever it is. And we see similar problems at various organizations. So good to do the training, whatever your approach is, right? There's no right or wrong.
I also, unsurprisingly, believe really deeply in clear expectations, right? That's why I'm in love with leveling frameworks. It's like, what are we basing this on? Like, what is good? And so if you're saying, like, if I'm saying I as a business have the right to tell you whether you're doing good, I also have an obligation to define what good is and then build the system around that definition of good. And so I think that's where, in my mind, performance has gone wrong in the past. Is like, there's been this, maybe it was 10 years ago, there was this big movement, throw away ratings, just tell people that they're good or bad, or don't tell them anything, who cares? And I think that what that did was create really ambiguous conversations around good. And to be able to say, like, hey, I expected you to do X, Y, and Z, whether that's your goals, whether that's competencies, and here's how you did with ratings or whatever. Like, to me, that's very clear, and we shouldn't be afraid of that.
I was just going to add, I think everyone, including in the chat, is in agreement. The way you put it, Rachel, which I actually appreciate. Like, at the end of the day, which is such a cliche saying, but we're here working in businesses. The point of a business is to make money. It's not necessarily to keep everyone happy all the time, and we need to be, but we want to do it in a way so that we have happy employees, so that we can get the most out of them. We want them to grow and develop and want to be part of our culture so that they can give us the most possible. So I think everyone's
fair.
Yes,
Equitable.
certainly. Right. And defining ahead of time what it looks like is key, because then you're just sort of blindsiding someone. I think what I'd like to also introduce to the conversation, which Una brought up, the annual review theater. To me, every time I start a new sort of sales conversation and I'm talking about annual reviews, I say, today's Thursday, August 14th. I go, I haven't had lunch yet today. I'm a little crabby. Like, Thursday, August 14th is not a good time to ask Matt to evaluate someone over the past 12 months of what they've been doing and contributing to our organization. So I would also like to bring up, and I might be jumping too far ahead, but the idea of, again, you should never be hearing this stuff for the first time. Annual reviews, in my mind, are a thing of the past that people got comfortable with because it's sort of seen as minimal effort. Like, okay, we hate doing it. We only have to do it once a year. We'll get it out the way. Documentation sort of mindset. I would much prefer us finding ways of either having more conversations or at least making people more aware earlier on in the process so that they can take corrective action if they need to, and we're not blindsiding them. So I'm not in any way sort of rebutting you. I'm just adding on to this with the idea of people should be continuously aware of how things are going.
The performance reviews are not bad. Like it's what we have to do in every relationship, business relationship, whether you're evaluating your landlord or right, and they're evaluating you. You're always evaluating something based on the expectations, but it's the how it's done that can be done so poorly that it just derails any morale or trust. And I have two stories for you. One is I used to play college volleyball, and we would have at the end of the year meetings with our coach about how did you do this year, right? And if you're surprised going into that meeting with the feedback, something was off, right? Whether the coach didn't share feedback with you throughout the year, and you're like, why are you telling me now I can't do anything at the end of the season? And I had a teammate come out of the meeting crying, right? It was just terrible. I'm like, how is this the first time she's hearing certain things, right? Like we literally spent hours every single day. And in coaching, you always give continuous feedback. And I just always felt like that was not the right way to handle a situation. And then the second thing in terms of the how, in HeyTaco, people track tacos. And our founder will tell you a great story, not a great story. Now we laugh about it, but at the time it was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? This customer got on a call with him and said, you know what? The leaderboard, who received the most recognition, I'm just going to fire the bottom 10% of the leaderboard. And he was like, what? We're shutting down the business right now. This is not the intended user recognition. Like, what are you doing? This is not law school, right? What's happening? Talked him off a ledge. But it was just an example of, wow, if that's how you're managing performance, that's probably not a good thing. You should not use tacos or any other recognition mechanism to determine who should be let go from your company, right? Not a good idea. So sometimes it's the how, like thinking through the how and sharing feedback more frequently that's important. It's not the performance. Of course, we have to do it. Like we have to pay each other too, but it's how you do it is that so much more meaningful.
That's a crazy story.
A terrible story, right?
You've told me that story before.
Never happened again. He was about to shut down the business, literally be like, this is ridiculous. That's not what I intended. But luckily, everything was fine. This was years ago, so it's all good.
And those of us who have been in HR have probably worked with that similar, with managers who want to take a similar approach, right? Like I have this thing and I'm going to turn it into a data metric that maybe it shouldn't be for. So I do think like when we're rolling out something like a HeyTaco or a peer-to-peer recognition or a top-down recognition, like we also have to define what that means, what good looks like there, and what it is not going to be used for, to make sure folks feel excited to engage with it.
Exactly. That's a great lead in into like, let's talk about what we can actually do. So Matt, I'm going to pass it to you to kind of lead this part of the conversation. Like, okay, what do we do to not suck at either of those two things?
Okay, no, that's a good way of putting it. And hopefully we can again give some really actionable sort of takeaways here. I think not to go too deep too quickly, but different systems will work for different organizations based on the size, the type of team, who we're working with, etc. So I'd love to hear sort of just to get us started, an ideal or close to ideal of, for Rachel and Kim, what you guys think in terms of, can you just like paint a picture of what it looks like when things are flowing really well? How are we giving recognition? When are we doing reviews? What are they looking like? How are we having these conversations? Who's involved? Because I know, Kim, you have very strong opinions about 360
Everything
versus not 360. No, but like peers versus not, and things like that. So I'd love to just start off high level with that, and then we can dig in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, for me at a high level program, a reward, recognition, performance, and compensation program are all really intertwined. We should be showing how they impact one another. Does high recognition impact your compensation? Can we be forward and transparent about that so your expectations are better set going into those conversations? When I think about like a culture that works well, thinking across some of my clients, one is making sure you, manager, everyone on your team gets recognized or gets a valuable piece of feedback once every 2 weeks. Literally, print a list out, write it on your, I use my desktop as a whiteboard. Write it down somewhere and check it off as it happens, just to make sure. And again, you should know how these people like to be recognized. You as a manager should be making sure it's in line with their goals and the company's goals, right? Recognized for what they're doing well on their growth path. That also benefits the company because we're here for a business. And make sure it flows a lot of different ways, right? Like peers can recognize, you can recognize upward, you can recognize downward. The one thing I get a little weird about is when like executives recognize the CEO. Stop, just don't. It's gross. Do that one privately. But I think for the company to see that, it would look so much better if that recognition went downward. Yeah, I think I'm just rambling at this point. So I'll kick it to Rachel.
It's okay. No, I asked a very ambiguous question, so feel free to take it any way you'd like to go. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, I will say one more thing, and this is HR gonna HR. Document it. I don't care where, honestly. I mean, I have my preferences. I would love for you to use the tool that I selected or whatever, but like document these things somewhere. Have an understanding of like, hey, what did we say we were going to do? How are we doing? And what happened? So making sure we're just capturing all of that, because my memory is that of a goldfish, and I assume other people's are too. Okay, now I really will stop rambling.
Rachel, I am so curious personally about what are you going to do regarding your feedback on the engagement?
Oh, well, I think this conversation and thinking about preparing for this conversation, I think, and I mentioned this before, I think there's recognition and feedback. And I think probably what needs to exist in the world is recognition and then positive feedback and constructive feedback, right? Like to me, this conversation has helped me sort of dissect a little bit about the difference between recognition and feedback in a world where someone's doing great, right? Recognition feeds a different need than feedback, right? Recognition says, oh, I feel good. And feedback says, oh, more of this, I'm on the right track. If I can apply this to the next project, I'll do a good job. Those are actually two different needs. And so I think in my perfect system, to your question, Matt, that's really talked about differently, that positive feedback and recognition don't get conflated. That's one thing. And then we'll just say, like, in my perfect system, it's about expectations. It's about clear standards against which we are given feedback, positive, constructive, and potentially even for recognition. Like, why not say, hey, I want to shout out Una, she did a great job of upholding this expectation, right? That then can be parlayed into a conversation about, hey, I want to dig into that. You really did do a good job. You really, met this expectation. Here was the expectation. Here's what you did. Here's the impact. And so I do think that this is helping me solve that problem of how do you both separate, but also create a connection for managers and employees between those two different needs to be filled. Kim, you and I disagree. I think that's fine about comp. I do still have it in my heart to say that if someone is performing, but it really requires two things. One is a really good performance system that we feel confident is well calibrated and fair. And then it also, I think in my mind, requires a formulaic approach. So it's not, I'm a manager, I get to pick a rating and I get to say what that means to an employee's pay, but it means I pick a rating. I spend all my time making sure that rating is like totally locked in. And then that means this person gets X because of the factors. And so that's my perfect system. I don't know, but it's all changing because AI is weird and there's so many new tools. Matt knows I've demoed about like 100 of them and everyone's taking this in a really different direction. So what I believe today, like I said, for the first time in a long time, is changing a little bit. So let's see where it goes.
I love your distinction between positive feedback and recognition, because you're right. They are, the difference in that nuance is so true. Like recognition, what I did, what we're celebrating, positive feedback. What can I keep doing? What do I need to invest more in? How
do I use this?
It's just, I want to wrap myself in a sweater of it.
Thank thinking about it today, like literally on this call. So thank you, team. Very helpful.
And all like, oh no, go ahead.
Over. It feels like recognition is like a win. Like you're celebrating, you did a great job on this, right? You don't always have time to go into the how you did and why you did, why you should keep doing, and this was amazing, yada, yada, yada. Yeah. But you can distill, even if you're an individual, you can distill great feedback from a recognition. Like if you just look at something, Rachel, whatever the kudos that you got this week, right? If you look at it, like there's probably positive feedback in there, like this is valuable for this person at least who gave that kudo. I should probably keep doing that when I'm interacting with them, right?
Yeah. Even if it's the same thing, again, it just serves a different purpose. Like I left that kudos, reading that kudos feeling like, oh, wow, like my weird thing that I did really made an impact. And I feel good about that people notice, right? Like I felt seen. But that's different than me sitting down with myself or my boss and saying, what you did here, let's think of other ways you could use creative uses of AI to support the team through HR processes. That's what it was about. So different, a little bit different, connected. So I'm excited to go explore that.
Matt, can I jump in with a question?
No, of course. No, please. Yeah.
So Harmon asked a question, says, will you share samples of performance review forms and the suggested cadence based on employer size? Matt, I know there's a follow-up that you're going to send, which is, it's not necessarily a performance review form, but it's prompts of how to guide a performance review conversation. So that might be helpful as a takeaway. But I'm curious, Rachel, Kim, Matt, what do you think about this kind of cadence based on the employer size? If annual is too infrequent, what would be better?
I like twice a year. And I like what Matt and others are doing to build up to that and make that easier. But I like twice a year. I have a thing I wrote, Matt, that I could send before you send out the follow-up. That's like not going to tell you exactly what to do, but it's how to make it criteria, how to make your review criteria based or expectation based as opposed to kind of open text. So yeah, I mean, I like a competency-based review twice a year. And in the future, I'm hoping that will be, because we collected competency-based feedback all through the half, and then we aggregated it. Interestingly, Matt, I was going to tell you this, but I'll do it live in front of everyone, which is we had a meeting with our managers yesterday to kick off our performance review process, which we're in the middle of. And I said, hey, if you could imagine like a future performance review, what would be different? And about 4 hands went up, and one person said, I just wish that I could kind of like collect everything that happens throughout the year, throughout the period, and then have it, because I think that's the hard part. And then all the other hands went down. That's all they all wanted was, cool. An opportunity to sort of like, that's the hard part, is remembering, right? So yeah, that's sort of how I think about it. And I use a lot of ratings. Like these were the 10 expectations. How'd you do? Some people feel scared of that. I think the first time I ever implemented that system, I asked this woman, oh, how was it? And it was the most amazing. It was like my HR mic drop moment. She goes, oh yeah, no, it was great. I knew exactly what was expected of me, and I know what I need to do to get promoted. And I was like, that's all we ever want to hear, is that people have clarity.
I take a different approach. Not shockingly, right? I think, again, different roads lead to Rome. And I think this is why it's so important to build your performance program for your organization, right? Like there are phenomenal tools, WorkStory, HeyTaco, others out there that can help support your program, but they are not your program, right? So, I don't love a competency-based review process. I feel like I'm getting a Yelp review when I read those. But I do deeply agree that the hardest part of reviews is remembering. Like, look at the headlines over the last 6 months. You will see things you do not remember. So it's really hard to understand what the person you worked with on an initiative 8 months ago and how that performance was. So being able to collect those little gems, those nuggets throughout the year, so when you're ready to recognize or do performance or whatever, you have this like Rolodex of information on each person. Like whatever your program is, that needs to be a part of the foundation.
Awesome. No, to fully agree, and that was the impetus for WorkStory. Thank you, thank you both for that. To be slightly salesy for a second. Okay, I had two quick follow-ups. One is slightly more cultural, but still plays into this. The first one though is the idea of making the ultimate conversation about development versus correction, or how do you balance like reflecting on previous performance and correcting it versus and including the forward-looking development of the employee? How do we incorporate both of those in a meaningful way and have a conversation around them? Because to me, most reviews or most teams that I speak with, they go into reviews, it's very much a reflection of did you hit the marks or not? And that's kind of it in a silo.
I was chatting with Rebecca Taylor the other day over at Skill Cycle, and she said to me, if you start thinking about goals as your lagging indicator and start thinking about development as your leading indicator, your performance program will change. And I got to tell you, it blew my mind a little bit. I think it's something I've practiced, but I never put a name to it. And when you go into a performance conversation with that mindset, like, all right, how you performed against these goals, like that is the lagging. Let's look forward. I think that's how you think about. I don't like correcting behavior, or correcting performance, but maybe shifting it or maybe recentering. But being able to say like, why did we miss these goals? Let's dive in. Like, let's figure it out. And hopefully you've given enough recognition and deposited enough drops into that bucket that you can have a very honest conversation. And sometimes that conversation is great and it was a 1 degree shift, getting better every day, nailing it. And the other end of that is eventually this person might not be right for the role. That doesn't mean you are not still responsible for their development, right? If they are failing in the role, eventually they may go be an employee somewhere else. How can you positively impact their skill set, their development, whatever on that journey? So I'm so good at rambling.
No, it's all great input. Thank you. And Rachel, I'm equally interested in your thoughts on this, because you also have your side hustle, quote unquote, which is not the side hustle, which is like a very cool separate business around career frameworks and helping people to develop and move forward and progress. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on balancing.
Yeah, I think it is a balance. I think it's one for, I think, Kim's saying this as well. It's like, we have to look back to know what's forward. I think, we can't say, oh, like there was a phase in my career once when somehow it became all developmental. And I was kind of like, did we miss the thread? You lose the thread here. I think it's, here's how you did based on what worked and didn't. This is where I'd focus. I mean, that sounds like oversimplified, but like our review is like, here's how you did. Here's like one thing that you want to focus on in the next 6 months. And taking that from the feedback from the last half and how things went. So I don't think that that's rocket science. I think it's a balance. I think one without the other and vice versa is a miss. So how do you find that right balance, and how do you connect it? If you give a review, this is like, you did all these things amazing, and then you say, now work on this, and it doesn't have anything to do with what they did, like that's confusing. Like, where's this coming from? So yeah, I think it's a balance. And it's interesting because it's funny you made the connection to LevelUp and to career frameworks, because sure, those do very much help define progression. If you want to get to the next level, here's the thing that you do. And all my leveling frameworks at OpenPhone in LevelUp all have this one tab that a wonderful woman that worked for me a long time ago named Helen made. And I give her credit all the time, where it's literally like, pick a level. It drops down to both the expectations, P2 to P3, and then assess them both and look at the difference. When we first made this, it was at an old job. I had a woman on my team who says, oh, I think I want to be promoted. And I was like, okay, that's sometimes a hard conversation. I knew in my heart she wasn't ready, but I couldn't really say why. So I assessed her against her current level and the next level. And I just said, hey, here's the areas where you're not ready at the next level. Let's find opportunities for you to get there. So I guess in the review, the conversation depends on, are you trying to get them up to performance at their current level, or are you trying to get them to the next? And that's where you can seek guidance from a set of expectations like a leveling framework to say, okay, let's focus on your current level because we're still working there, or hey, you're really nailing it here. I'm going to help you get opportunities and experiences to build this skill, which you need for the next level.
No, amazing. Oh, go
I
ahead.
wish
Sorry.
to
Yeah.
let us do the emoji reacts on the webinars because yes.
No, I like how you said, Rachel, connecting.
Kim, then, but doesn't that feel like a Yelp review too? The same thing.
I don't think so. When a performance review program or initiative is for everyone in the company, right? Like it's for the person who I'm good in my level. I don't want to get promoted. I'm not trying to. It's also for that, like, let's go.
Yeah.
So I think we are balancing those different user archetypes, if you will, in a performance review program. But when you're having those development conversations, I do think like, yeah, I'm not rating you against all the competencies, but I can say like, oh, there's a gap here, there's a gap here. I like competencies.
Like I asked that with all curiosity, not
totally. I'm an enigma.
No, this is good. It's good to challenge in that way. Yeah.
I love the idea. Like when you were saying that, I was like, oh yeah, I've done frameworks for every department. I love thinking about those differences. I just don't incorporate that into a review program, and pros and cons.
A question for the two of you as practitioners. Do you think you can correct performance with a developmental conversation?
One? No, probably not just one.
Not just one, of course, but like in a sense of aspirational, right? Because just from the receiving end, I think like sometimes telling people what they didn't do well is not as effective as telling them what good looks like. You might say, hey, you're not quite there, but this is what good looks like. Do you think that's a helpful way to get people up to, in the kind of your current role assessment, not necessarily like, here's how you get to the next role, because that's an internally developmental conversation. Do you think it helps correct that performance?
I'll say a couple things. I think there are valuable conversations to be had if someone's missing the mark and they want to grow, right? Like we need to have some conversations about this. And I think you can do that. Like, what are your personal goals? What are your professional goals? How can I, as your manager, support you to get there? Here are the gaps. And then I will say, again, HR gonna HR, I like a PIP. I like a performance improvement plan. I have a playbook on it. It's called Suck This PIP because I am not a normal human. But it really is a cheeky guide to PIPs are scary, right? Like it is a cheeky guide to really like, how do you introduce this conversation of underperformance? How do you start walking into the water and not just dump straight into the deep end of this like very helpful conversation? And again, my pips take an approach of how can we support you? Like what are your competency gaps? What support can we offer? And what support do you need? And I've had a lot of employees pass a PIP program. I've also had employees opt out and say, yeah, I'm out. This sucks. Fine. Like you live your life, babe. So yeah, I think those are very valuable conversations to have. And when done well, dropping droplets in the trust bucket.
I like a PIP too, Kim.
We are the same person.
They have a really bad reputation because they're executed poorly. I think you never force someone on a PIP. I think creating a space for that opt out is really important. I'll say something different about your question, Una, but just like a small little tidbit that I find useful is I posted about this on LinkedIn a month ago. It feels sort of like a bastardization of something really important in our lives, which is the idea of SBI, right? Situation, behavior, impact. If you haven't heard of that, it's like a really common feedback framework. And I've been learning about it my entire career, taught it lots of times. I recently decided to change it and to make it ESBI, which is expectation, situation, behavior, impact. So if you're giving someone feedback, tying it to the expectation explicitly that they're missing. So to your question of can you correct performance through, clear expectations? I think you have to. So, hey, at your level, I expect you to be able to own a project end to end. In the project that you're running right now, you didn't do it because X, Y, Z, and the impact is that we're behind and we're not going to do it. If I just say like, hey, you're not running this project well, and here's the impact, we're behind, that's actually not that powerful. But if you say, in your role, in your level, I expect this. This is the standard. Here's where you're at compared to that. That's really objective. And so I think that when done well and based on clearly defined and like common expectations, those conversations can make a difference.
Any other question? Any questions from the gallery?
Yeah. I was curious if there's anyone else who wanted to chime in. If not, that's okay.
I was wondering if there's no more questions, we'll monitor the chat. If we can just each end with maybe like one thing of like, you should do this. If you leave, if this call was one thing, do this when it comes to integrating performance and recognition. What do you guys think about that? Is there one thing?
Just start, right? Like we've talked a lot about best practices and theories and programs and but if you want to start recognizing your team, just start. Give the positive 3 things for each employee. Positive feedback, constructive feedback aligned with their goals and the company's goals, and recognition in the way that feels best to them.
That's pretty good. I would just add, know what good looks like, know what you're recognizing, what is expected. Does your employee know that? And if they don't, tell them, and then align feedback, recognition, everything to it.
Una, you want me to go next?
Okay.
No, I'll actually just echo what Kim said earlier around documentation. Find ways of documenting the feedback and recognition you're giving so that you can save yourself time when it comes to having any type of conversation, not just the performance review, a one-on-one, a casual sit down. You'll be so much better equipped and know exactly not only what you shared, but be so much more open with the employee, and they'll again trust you as a result of having that more open, candid conversation, as opposed to you just sitting down and being like, oh, this is how I feel, which is just not going to be helpful to anyone. So document wherever, even if it's a Word document, although I hate that and no one's ever going to do that, which again is why we developed a platform, but find ways of keeping track so you can reference it and save yourself time and effort down the line.
Mine is, no time like the present. So when you think something, say something. So if it's feedback that's constructive that could help a person, just say it. Schedule time right away. If it's a thank you, say it right now. I think we leave so many things unsaid, for better or for worse, that just kind of bumble up. And the bad things create bumps in the road that you can't drive over anymore, right? And the good things left unsaid, what a missed opportunity, right? So I'm like, every day, just whatever comes to mind, think about it, right? But then actually share that with the person that should hear it. Rachel, Kim, Matt, such
Amazing.
a pleasure to talk today. Finally live. We prepared a couple times, so super fun to be here. And to everyone who's still here on the call, we'll hang out for a couple more minutes just in case people have any questions or whatnot. But thank you for joining us, and we will follow up with the resources both Rachel and Kim mentioned, as well as Matt and some from HeyTaco, and with LinkedIn accounts from everyone, so you can connect it with people offline and kind of find your community and ask any further questions. So thank you.